9th of December 1965, hundreds of witnesses in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania saw an unidentified flying object streak through the sky.
But it was the people of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, who not only saw, but actually found what many claim was a vehicle from outer space. The object was clearly seen, not just falling, but appearing to land in the woods nearby. Within 2 hours, armed military forces of the U.S. government literally invaded this small Pennsylvania town, retrieved the object, and hauled it away. What was it that fell or landed near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania? Does the U.S. government now have an authentic UFO in its possession?
For over 35 years, Kecksburg, Pennsylvania has been a town divided by a bizarre controversy. Many of its citizens claim that nothing out of the ordinary has ever happened there, while other residents claim that in December of 1965, this Westmoreland County village was briefly the home of a crashed UFO.
The American government's policy on UFOs has taken some bizarre twists and turns in the last 50 years.
To the best of our knowledge, this all began in 1947 with a private plane flying over Washington State.
A businessman, Kenneth Arnold, saw 9 crescent-shaped objects flying in an echelon formation near Mount Lanier.
And he naturally thought that these were planes, but they were not behaving like any airplanes he had seen.
He told reporters at Yakima, Washington, that the motion of the objects he'd seen was like that of a saucer skipping across the pond.
This was the first sighting to really stick in the public mind, and it gave it the term flying saucers.
But when this thing first began to develop in the late 40s, the military people primarily made the policy decision. Harry Truman turned it over to the Air Force, Army, and Navy. And being professional military, having just been through a terribly bloody war, and then being involved in what turned out to be a very stressful war, the policy decisions were based on fear. We didn't know who these people were, where they were from, why they were here, and of course, the whole nature of military thinking is they're here to invade us. They're going to take over the planet.
In September 1947, Lieutenant General Nathan Twining, head of Air Materiel Command, wrote to the office of the Commanding General of the Army Air Forces. And in this letter, he strongly recommended that an official investigation be carried out. And on December 30th that year, a project was approved and given space at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. The general public knew that the Air Force had started some kind of hunt for flying saucers, so the operation was widely referred to as Project Saucer, but its official code name was Project Sign. From its very first investigation, it was clear that something else was going on behind the scenes. What appeared to be going on was an attempt to conceal the whole truth about the matter.
In 1948, in Project Sign, something called the Estimate of the Situation was written. There's controversy about what was in the Estimate of the Situation and who wrote it, but it stated essentially that this was an extraterrestrial phenomenon. The Estimate of the Situation was then sent to George Vandenberg, who was Air Force Chief of Staff at the time. Vandenberg took a look at this estimate and just thought the document was just ridiculous nonsense. He ordered all the copies of it destroyed, and they were, which is why we don't really know what was in it.
If the report contained nothing of a secret nature, why was the order given for it to be destroyed?
They evidently hit on something he already knew, so the only thing he could do was reject the report and order every copy of it destroyed. From that time on, we can trace the deliberate attempt on the part of some, not all, of the Air Force to conceal the truth about UFOs.
What is the truth about this strange metal object that witnesses say crashed in the woods near Kecksburg? And why do some of them say the local people were ordered to keep quiet about what happened?
What you saw out there in that field? It was nothing.
Was it because they had stumbled across some top-secret government project? Or because they had seen an object that proved the existence of intelligent life on other planets? To learn the truth, we'll have to go back to that December afternoon in 1965.
It was about 4:47 p.m. when the object apparently impacted in the woods at Kecksburg. There are a number of local residents around Kecksburg who saw the object get down into the wooded area. While none of these people reported any type of sound of impact, almost momentarily there was a column of blue smoke that rose up out of the woods.
According to the eyewitness accounts, Kecksburg residents rushed to the spot where they now saw smoke rising through the trees. There, they say, they discovered a metallic object partially buried at the bottom of a ravine, still smoking from its long descent through the Earth's atmosphere. Kecksburg resident Jim Romansky says he was one of the first to locate the object at the bottom of a densely wooded ravine.
There was this large metal object in front of me. I've described it as a large acorn. And the reason I say the acorn is because around the bottom of this object there was a bumper that went the whole way around this thing. It was dented and it had a very distinct color. This thing was a bronze, copper, steel. It was a color that it's very hard even to describe.
Then, according to Romansky and many other witnesses, armed U.S. soldiers began to arrive with trucks and other heavy equipment.
The military started coming in. We were under martial law. Jeeps, trucks everywhere. The MPs were at every corner.
Down through the woods come two guys. Trench coats, drooped out hair. He looked around, he looked at the object, he looked at us in a very authoritative voice. Told us that this area is now quarantined, it's restricted, get out.
Okay, guys, let's put it up there.
According to Romansky and many other witnesses interviewed by Stan Gordon, the object only remained in the ravine for a few hours because the soldiers who had so quickly arrived on the scene recovered the object and took it somewhere else.
Here comes this big flatbed truck. The back of this flatbed, it had this big tarp on it. It was stretched down around this object. And it had the same outline. In fact, I know I could see the bumper under this tarp because you could see the shape of it. The tarp was pulled so tight that you could see the shape. And I knew in my mind that was what they brought down off that mountain, the object.
The military truck with the flatbed trailer with the object on it departed late that evening from Kecksburg. And from information we now have, the truck continued on and it went to Lockbourne Air Force Base in Columbus, Ohio, where it stayed over for a short period of time. From there, it went over to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. It seems very likely that our government had tracked the object and they had notified the quick response recovery teams that are involved in this type of operation.
Since the object was taken away and to date at least never seen again, you might think that as far as the residents of Kecksburg were concerned, the incident was over. But according to a number of the eyewitnesses, the most terrifying aspect of their encounter with a UFO had just begun.
John Murphy, who was the news director of WHJB, felt that the story concerning the object at Kecksburg was of great importance. So he did a lot of investigation on the case and interviewed a number of witnesses who had been involved or had knowledge about the incident.
Now, what exactly did you see?
I saw a ship falling from the sky and was burning.
Is that what you saw?
It was in the shape of an acorn, came down out of the sky, and it just landed really smoothly in the woods. It had interesting writing on it, like nothing we've ever seen in this town.
Right, are you sure it wasn't like Japanese writing or something?
No, positive. Very different.
You're saying it's a spaceship, not anything that our government.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
So what is the situation here on the home front around here with all the soldiers?
We don't know what's happening, so it's very frightening. Very frightening.
According to the witness accounts, something seems to have badly frightened a good many of those who had seen the unidentified flying object and who had witnessed its recovery by the military.
This is John Murphy. We're going to cut for a quick commercial break. Hello, this is John. Yes.
Sally?
Hey, Sally, how you doing?
Listen, about our interview?
Yes, that was a great interview yesterday. You just did a good job.
I wish you would, but I'm not. I made a big mistake. I need to not air it. Well, people make mistakes, and I was wrong.
We're back.
It seems as though something must have occurred between the time of the interview with John Murphy and the time that the radio special was to be aired, because of the fact that these people were willing to be interviewed, and then suddenly they decided they didn't want their name or any information aired with this report.
Why? What happened to cause the witnesses to refuse to make their testimony public when they'd been so willing only hours before? Did something of unknown origin land or crash near Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, or didn't it? What could bring the military out so quickly and in such numbers to what is still a rural township in the Pennsylvania hills? Is there an official government position on this as yet unexplained event? And if there is, what exactly is it? With a few minor variations, what we have just seen is the story eyewitnesses have been telling about the Kecksburg event for the past 35 years. It seems simple and straightforward enough. A flaming object of some sort came down in the woods. A number of people saw it in the sky. Some went to the site and actually examined it close up. Then military officials came in, scooped it up, and hauled it away. That should have been the end of it. But there are complications.
Anything given to Project Sign had to be purged and passed down from upstairs after they found a way to successfully explain it away. Either it was Venus, a star.
But the fact the Air Force ultimately dismissed this sighting suggests they weren't interested in solving mystery.
Project Sign continued to find explanations for many of the sightings that were reported to them.
Project Sign was eventually changed to Project Grudge to get out what were considered to be soft-minded people, making Project Grudge a little bit more hard-nosed. The problem was, even Project Grudge had a significant number of cases which could not be identified. By 1951, Project Grudge became Project Blue Book. So the Air Force embarked on a mission to go forward and reduce the number of reports to a minimum. And their identifications became outlandish, totally unrelated to what people were seeing, and what they were looking at was not a UFO, obviously, it was something else. Once the reports were reduced to a minimum, it would show people that everything in the sky could be identified.
The Air Force wanted to be able to say, we have the situation under control. After 1953, Project Blue Book was not trying to find out whether there were visitors from outer space.
Jim Romansky says that he has maintained for 30 years that the meteor story was the one given to some Kecksburg residents by the military.
Jump in a truck and someone said, hey, what was that up there anyhow? And the guy hollered back, it was a meteorite. And I looked at one guy and we both bust out laughing. We knew.
But strangely enough, there was a meteor sighting that very night, seen by hundreds of people across the northeastern United States and some parts of Canada. That is a fact that is not in question. But could it have been seen in Kecksburg?
The typical meteorite event is one of the most spectacular things that is fairly commonly observed on the Earth. An object from space plunges into the atmosphere of the Earth, perhaps as fast as 40 miles a second. It pushes the air in front of it. The air pressure builds on it, and often fragments the object, breaking it into many pieces. It looks like a shower of Roman candle as the pieces then disappear, and the fireball can be very bright, so bright it can be seen in broad daylight, as brilliant in the sky, or so bright that it can light the whole night sky, almost like day.
Could this have been what the area residents in and around Kecksburg actually saw?
I was working on my car, Corvair, out in the driveway, and I heard this sizzling noise, and I
couldn't figure out what it was. It didn't sound like an airplane. And I looked up in the sky, and coming from the north, say northwest, and headed east-southeast, and looked like a big fireball. It was up there about, I'd say, 2 or 3 miles, maybe better than that. And I watched it, and it seemed like it was headed for the mountain. So I went out on the road right out here, and I watched it, and it seemed like it couldn't make up its mind what it wanted to do, just like this radio control. It made it like a figure 8, and it come back in, I'd say, almost into Kecksburg, and it just went down, just disappeared.
There are 2 things that you can guarantee with almost every fireball event. One is that it's interpreted in the experience of the viewer, so there'll be a lot of different interpretations. Secondly is that there'll be a lot of misimpressions, a lot of confusion, and that the people who believe they know where it landed are really very far away from where the event occurred.
And I figured, well, I'm going to go up and look. So I figured, well, I'll go up there where I used to go hunting and set up on top of the hill, and you can overlook Kecksburg down in the valley, and that'd be a good spot to find something. So I went up, and I looked down in the woods, up the part of the woods there, at the edge, and you could see this arcing, and it just looked like somebody welding or something. So I went down and got a flashlight, went down and crossed the creek, and I went up, and there it was. I says, I couldn't figure out what it was. And it looked like an acorn, but the front end of it was stuck down in the ground about 2 or 3 feet, and there was no windows in it, there was no rivet marks or nothing. It just laid there, and it was like arcing, and you could smell like some kind of a acid or something like that, a burn or something. And I figured, well, it couldn't be an airplane, it couldn't be a meteorite, because meteorite, I understand whenever they come down with a bang, they come straight down. And this couldn't have been a meteor, and like people says, it must have been a meteor. I said, no, it wasn't a meteor. I said, there's something I'd never seen before.
Bill Bulebush was just one of the eyewitnesses to get within 15 to 20 feet of the object. He and other witnesses described it as about the size of a Volkswagen, but plainly visible. Could they be describing a meteorite?
If you had a meteorite the size of a Volkswagen surviving to the Earth's surface, it's going to be going at a velocity of 4 or 5 miles per second. It's going to make a crater in the soil, and it'll do shockwave excavation. It'll make a crater maybe 4 to 10 times its own diameter, depending on its velocity. And at the end of that, if it has not disrupted, it will burrow out at the bottom of the crater and make a little tunnel, come to rest at the end of that tunnel.
Obviously, what eyewitnesses say they saw in the woods that night was not the object meteorologists would describe as a meteorite. Yet the very fact that there was a meteor seen in the area that night has added confusion to the controversy.
The evidence that the object was a meteor is overwhelming. It's well documented by sightings and photographs taken widely apart in different parts of the country. The fact that it was seen from such widely separated areas demonstrates that it was something very high in the sky, which fits naturally the description of a bolide or fireball. Also, it was traveling at the appropriate speed, about 32,000 miles per hour, and astronomers estimated that, plus we even have a photograph of a smoke trail. So it's well documented that it was a meteor.
On December 9th, 1965, 4:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the meteorite entered the atmosphere south of Detroit, headed out over Ontario, south of Windsor, Ontario. And any fragments would have landed in the area south and east of Windsor, Ontario. It would have been seen over a much wider area, however. It could have been seen in the Kecksburg area. But there's no question it could not have landed there. It was headed in the wrong direction.
Yet there also seems to be little question that the military did move into Kecksburg very quickly and with considerable purpose and manpower.
So we went back up, and I say, on the arm, maybe in 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And you couldn't get near the place. I says, cars and people and everything. So we finally worked our way up into where I had the car parked before. And my kid couldn't get over. The Army was down in there, the trucks. And the Army, they had like a fence around there that you weren't allowed in there. And that was it.
It seems unlikely that the U.S. military would take such extreme measures to protect a meteorite. Yet some witnesses today insist they were threatened. Others claim nothing at all happened.
I think these people knew something was down. The military presence was so strong that night that a lot of people, military knew, seen something, lived real close to it, was either told, quiet, or bought out, or something.
You guys listen up. What you saw out there was nothing. Don't say anything to anyone. Not your mom, not your dad, or anyone.
But remember, John Murphy, news director of the local radio station, was already interviewing witnesses for a special news program he called Object in the Woods. Suddenly, he ran into a stone wall. Could there be more to this part of the story than meets the eye? There are those who believe John Murphy may have been an eyewitness himself.
Told me that something had landed in the woods. He didn't know what, but he was going down there. When he came back up, at some point there, military had come in. The state police were there. He couldn't get back down. They took the film out of his camera. I believe he still had some in his pocket. They didn't get it. It was fine. He had his tape recorder with him.
From all accounts, John Murphy was an aggressive professional newsman. Could it be that he actually got photographs of the object?
I know John had pictures of the object. He told me to. He wouldn't lie about that. It's too good a story to pass up.
But unfortunately, John Murphy never got to tell his story.
We received other calls early tonight from some other people who said they had changed their minds now, at the last minute, and did not want the statements they had made over this past weekend used on this radio program tonight. One person said that they was afraid of the state police, and another person said they did not want to get in trouble with the Army.
A week or two after that, after they had censored, or the program had to be so censored, that he clammed up all of a sudden himself. Wouldn't talk about it. Somebody had to have gotten to him. Because it was very unlike John to just drop something.
John apparently let the matter drop for several years, but a few weeks after giving Stan Gordon a copy of the complete, uncut tape that he never got on the air, John Murphy was killed in a bizarre hit-and-run near Santa Barbara, California.
As I read on the police report, he was looking at, or crossing the road to look at, the oil slicks of Santa Barbara at 10 o'clock at night. Why would he cross a road at 10 o'clock at night to see an oil slick? The whole thing was missing. It's like somebody might have shot him, huh?
We may never know. Even the tape given to Stan Gordon has mysteriously disappeared. All of that notwithstanding, the official government position even today is that what actually came down in Kecksburg was a meteor. A flaming object that made a controlled landing. A metallic shape without joints or seams. Strange markings unlike anything on Earth. Rapid military deployment. If all these clues are based on fact, do they indeed add up to some kind of spacecraft from another world? Or is there some other possibility that might excite that level of government interest? It is not disputed that the military gathered up and hauled something away from Kecksburg that night. We can safely assume it wasn't a meteorite, so what was it? Clifford Stone, a former military NCO involved with UFO investigations, believes he knows.
I believe the United States government has the crash remains of several UFO crashes as well as debris of several other UFOs, to include the object that was recovered from Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. My basis for this belief is on what I have observed and what I have been involved in for 22 and a half years serving this great nation of ours.
The government, of course, has not owned up to any such thing, and the mystery took on a new and surprising twist when reports of a secret Russian satellite suddenly began to surface. Now, there was another possible scapegoat. If the meteor thing didn't hold up, maybe the episode at Kecksburg could be fallout from a failed Russian space launch. A satisfactory explanation for what landed at Kecksburg still eludes serious researchers. Could it be there was something going on at that time the government wasn't willing to share with the public? If so, what's the point in keeping it a secret today? What was Cosmos 96, and how did it get to be entangled with the events of Kecksburg? Setting aside the idea of a meteor for the moment, there seems to be just two possibilities for what came out of the sky near Kecksburg in 1965. Either it was part of a top-secret American or Soviet satellite project, or it was some sort of vehicle that no one is willing or capable of describing.
Remember that by 1965, both the United States and the Soviet Union had the capability of putting nuclear weapons in orbit, and each was desperate to learn about the technology of the other. These rockets had segments that were jettisoned in flight and that fell back toward the Earth, presumably to burn up on re-entry. This practice has continued to the present day, and we now know that sometimes large parts of these space vehicles do not burn up entirely. Occasionally, a rather large fragment will actually reach the ground intact.
There has been a treaty on the books for many years that launching countries have in regard to the fact that if something of foreign origin would fall on our soil, we would recover it and make them aware of this and give it back to the launching country.
Remember that the American military would have been very interested in recovering a Soviet probe such as Cosmos 96. It would have told a great deal about Russian military expertise at that time, particularly if there was any reason to believe that the object was part of a Soviet weapons system equipped with nuclear missiles.
December 9th, 1965, seems to have been a particularly exciting day for things falling out of the sky. The fact is, a Soviet Venus probe launched the previous November did come crashing to Earth on that particular date. The question is, could it have come down near Kecksburg?
Weapon-bearing satellite systems are not designed to make soft landings. If indeed the object that came down in Kecksburg that day was a part of such a weapon system, it first of all would not have made a soft landing, and secondly, most likely there would have been massive destruction in that area.
It was launched on November 23, 1965, but its booster failed before it could be sent on its way to the second planet.
It has indeed been verified from the U.S. Space Command and the Naval Surveillance Center that Cosmos 96 did indeed re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at about 3:18 a.m. on the same morning of the Kecksburg incident, and that occurred in Canada. Cosmos 96 was a Venus probe, and there are in fact similarities in the general shape of the two.
There was a tiny bit of resemblance, but that's where it stopped. I mean, the Venus probe, you had pieces sticking out.
If the object at Kecksburg was a failed Soviet probe of some kind, could this explain the strange hieroglyphics seen on the object by several witnesses?
The external markings or identification markings that we have seen on many of the Soviet probes at the time would look very unusual to people who are not familiar with the Russian language or the type of lettering. And in fact, if the object had re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, there could have been some scarring and burning, and they could have looked somewhat distorted from the re-entry.
My dad is originally from Keene, and I went to him one time and I said, Dad, I said, you can read and write Polish and Russian. Yeah. I said, write me something in both dialects. He said, what? I said, just write me anything. And he wrote a few things, And I looked at it, and I turned it upside down, even held it up and looked backwards to it. Even the Polish and Russian writing that I see doesn't come nowhere.
The simple fact that Cosmos 96 fell to Earth on the very same day as the Kecksburg incident seems to be sufficient evidence for many people that they were one and the same. But perhaps we shouldn't make up our minds just yet.
I mean, the Venus probe, you had pieces sticking out. It was that quick that I could look at the picture and it wasn't it. Because I've been a machinist for almost 30 years now. And I've cut a lot of metal, different kinds of metal. And I've never run into it again, never.
So what does that leave us with? Where does the evidence point?
We have to look at the possibility that one, that the object in question may have been man-made, possibly Soviet origin, or this could have been an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
For 35 years, the object that landed at Kecksburg has been the subject of heated controversy. And there are reasons to believe that the fallen Russian space probe, Cosmos 96, could have been the object seen by so many that December day in 1965. Particularly since we know that Cosmos 96 did crash on that day. But we must still consider several other important facts about that particular space probe.
What witnesses describe to us is the fact that the object moved slow enough that some people could actually see what it looked like individual flames coming from the object. But according to what eyewitnesses describe, those who did get close to it, they describe an object that looked to have been a one-piece type unit.
Still, without the object itself, there is no final proof. Is it possible that it still might be held in some military storage facility somewhere? There have been attempts to trace its whereabouts, and until now, the search has come to a dead end. Clifford Stone, a former military NCO who served on several bases where UFOs were the subject of investigation, believes he may have seen the Kecksburg object.
I was fortunate enough to have a friend at Lockman Air Force Base where the object from Kecksburg, Pennsylvania was brought.